Her small hands tightly clutched Mom's clothes, her voice choked with tears.
Mom.
Lily fell asleep in the bathtub. I called her so many times. But she won't wake up no matter how much I call. She listens to you the most.
Mom.
Please make her wake up and eat birthday cake with me. When the police arrived, they questioned Mom first. Their voices calm but sharp, cutting through the thick tension in the air. Two officers stood in the living room, one jotting notes on a notepad, the other fixing Mom with a steady gaze. Neither judgmental nor sympathetic, just doing their jobs. Chloe clung to Mom's leg, her small body trembling, her eyes wide with fear as she stared at the officers' uniforms. I floated beside them, my chest tight with dread, knowing that the moment Mom opened the bathroom door, everything would shatter. Ma'am, could you tell us what happened? The officer with the notepad asked, his pen hovering over the paper. Your neighbor called 911 about a possible medical emergency with your husband. But when we arrived, your daughter mentioned another family member in the bathroom. Can you explain? Mom's face paled, her hands wringing together so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She glanced at the bathroom door, then at Chloe, then back at the officers, her voice cracking as she spoke. That's my oldest daughter, Lily. She's 10. She has dissociative identity disorder. We had a fight last night, her sister's birthday, and I locked her in the bathroom to cool off. I thought she was just acting out like she always does. Acting out how? The other officer asked, stepping closer. Did she threaten to hurt herself? Mom's eyes filled with tears, and she let out a shaky breath. She's tried to kill herself before, jumping out windows, cutting her wrists, drowning, but we always saved her. Last night, I thought she was faking it. I told her if she felt so bad,
She should just die.
her voice broke, and she covered her mouth as if the words themselves were choking her. I didn't mean it. I was just angry. Chloe's never had a proper birthday because of Lily's episodes,
And I snapped.
I thought she'd come out this morning, mad but alive. I made her favorite breakfast. I even apologized. The officer with the notepad nodded, scribbling down her words. And when did you last see Lily conscious? Last night around 7, Mom said. I locked her in the bathroom after slapping her. I was so angry I didn't check on her again. My husband stayed up half the night calling her name, but she didn't answer. I told him she was just being stubborn. I thought she'd come out when she was ready. She paused, her gaze drifting to the bathroom door again, and I could see the moment realization began to sink in, slow, cruel, and unforgiving. She's not acting, is she? The officers exchanged a quiet glance. The one without the notepad spoke gently, but his words were like a knife to Mom's heart.
Ma'am.
We should check on her. Could you unlock the bathroom door? I didn't lock it, Mom whispered, her legs giving out. Chloe screamed as Mom stumbled, and the officer quickly reached out to study her. I swear I didn't lock it. She could have come out any time. She just didn't. I floated ahead of them as they walked toward the bathroom, my soul heavy with grief. I knew what they'd find, my body, pale and cold, floating in a tub of crimson water, the eyebrow razor still clutched in my hand. I knew the look of horror that would cross their faces, the sound of Mom's scream, the way Chloe would bury her face in Mom's shoulder and cry. I wanted to stop them, to spare them the pain, but I was just a spectator, trapped in this limbo, unable to touch or speak or change a thing. The officer reached for the doorknob and turned it slowly. The door creaked open and the smell of blood hit the air, thick, metallic, impossible to ignore. Mom let out a strangled cry and collapsed to her knees, Chloe clinging to her, her small body shaking violently. The officers stepped inside, and I saw the way their shoulders tensed as they looked at the tub. Call the medical examiner, the officer with the notepad said. His voice tight, he pulled out his radio and spoke into it. His words short and precise.
Possible suicide.
10-year-old female. Need me on scene ASAP. Mom didn't move. She just knelt on the floor, staring at the bathroom door, her eyes empty. Lily, she whispered over and over again. Lily.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. Please come out.
Please.
Chloe looked up at the officers, her face streaked with tears, her voice small and broken. Is Lily asleep forever? She asked. She won't wake up. I called her so many times. Did I do something wrong? Did I make her mad? The officer knelt down beside Chloe, his voice soft.
No, sweetie.
You didn't do anything wrong. Your sister was sick. She hurt a lot. And sometimes when people hurt that much, they can't stay anymore.
He didn't use the word dead.
He didn't have to. Chloe understood, and she burst into tears, throwing her arms around Mom's neck. I floated into the bathroom, staring at my body. It looked so small, so fragile. Nothing like the girl who had fought so hard to stay alive. For her family, the water had grown cold, the blood now a dark, murky red, and my wrist lay limp over the edge of the tub. I reached out, my hand passing through my arm,
And I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Grief.
guilt, regret, all mixing together into a suffocating ache. One's voice echoed in my mind, cold and mocking. See, this is what you wanted. You thought you'd set them free. But look at them. They're broken. Just like you. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him he was wrong. But I couldn't. He was right. I thought death would be a gift, a way to lift the burden from my family's shoulders. But all I'd done was destroy them. Mom was shattered, Chloe was terrified, and Dad was in the hospital, fighting for his life. All because of me. The medical examiner arrived a short time later. A woman in a white coat with a solemn expression. She stepped into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. And I stayed outside, floating beside Mom and Chloe. Mom hadn't moved from her spot on the floor, her eyes fixed on the door, as if she expected the medical examiner to come out and tell her it was all a mistake, that Lily was alive, that she'd just been sleeping. While we waited, the officers continued their questioning. They asked Mom about Lily's disorder, about the previous suicide attempts, about the fight last night. Mom told them everything about the neighbor's relative, about the trauma that had caused Lily's death, about the way one would take over and try to die. She told them about the medication, about running out of pills, about the way she'd snapped. When Lily said she felt sick on Chloe's birthday, I was so tired, Mom said, her voice hollow. Tired of working, tired of worrying, tired of watching my daughter hurt herself. I thought if she just stopped, she just got better, our lives would go back to normal. But I pushed her too hard.
I said things I shouldn't have said.
I locked her in here, and I left her alone. It's my fault. All of it. The officer shook his head. Ma'am, it's not your fault. You were doing the best you could. Raising a child with DID is not easy, especially with everything else you're dealing with. Your mother-in-law in the hospital, your husband working 2 jobs, your younger daughter to care for. You were overwhelmed. That's not a crime. But it is my fault. Mom insisted, tears streaming down her face. I should have checked on her. I should have realized she wasn't faking. I should have been there for her. Instead, I was mad at her for ruining Chloe's birthday. I'm a terrible mother. Chloe pulled back from Mom's neck, her small hand touching Mom's cheek.
No, Mom.
You're not a terrible mother. Lily loves you. She told me so. She said you work so hard for us. And she's sorry for making you tired. Mom hugged Chloe tightly, sobbing into her hair. I don't want to be sorry. I want her back. I'd trade everything to have her back. I floated beside them, my own tears flowing. Tears that no one could see. Tears that didn't matter. I wanted to hug them, to tell them I loved them, to beg for their forgiveness. But I couldn't. I was just a ghost, a memory, a mistake that could never be fixed. The medical examiner opened the bathroom door a short time later, her expression even more solemn than before. She walked over to Mom, kneeling down beside her.
Mom, I'm so sorry.
Your daughter is deceased. Cause of death is severe blood loss from a wrist laceration. The wound is deep, consistent with a deliberate self-inflicted injury. Based on the state of the body and the water temperature, I estimate time of death was between 8 and 10 last night. Mom let out a scream that tore through the house, a sound so full of pain and grief that it made my soul ache. She collapsed forward, her forehead touching the floor, and Chloe clung to her, crying hysterically. The officers stood quietly, giving them a moment to grieve, while the medical examiner spoke to them in low, quiet tones about the next steps. Contacting the funeral home, filing a report, notifying Dad. We need to tell her husband. The medical examiner said he's in the hospital, correct? We should let him know as soon as possible. But we need to be careful. Given his condition, the news could be very stressful. Mom nodded, her body shaking. I'll tell him. I have to. He loved her so much. He'd want to know. She paused, then looked up at the medical examiner, her eyes filled with desperation.
It was suicide, right?
She did it herself. It wasn't. It wasn't anyone else's fault. The medical examiner hesitated, then nodded. Yes, ma'am. All evidence points to suicide. The razor was found in her hand. The wound is consistent with self-infliction, and there are no signs of foul play.
I'm sorry, Mom.
Closed. The zipper of the black body bag sounded like a scream. It was a harsh, metallic rasp that cut through the silence of the bathroom, tearing away the last shred of denial in the house. I watched the 2 EMTs gently lift my rigid, heavy form and place it inside. The zipper moved up, swallowing my pale feet, my bruised knees, the wet hem of my pajama shirt, and finally, my face. The moment I was sealed in the dark, Chloe let out a sound I had never heard before, a high, thin keening noise, like a wounded animal. She scrambled backward until her back hit the hallway wall, her hands covering her ears. "Don't put her in the bag," Chloe shrieked, kicking her legs out at the officer, who tried to soothe her. "It's dark in there. Lily's afraid of the dark." "Mom, tell them." "She's afraid." Mom didn't speak. She was sitting on the edge of the hallway runner, her knees pulled to her chest, rocking slightly. Her eyes were fixed on the black bag as they loaded it onto the gurney. She looked entirely hollowed out, a shell of the woman who had angrily fried eggs just hours ago. "She's afraid of the dark." Chloe's words echoed in my chest. I floated over to my little sister, reaching out to brush her hair. My translucent fingers passed right through her curls. "Stop crying," I wanted to whisper. "I'm not in the bag, Chloe. I'm right here." But the cold, mocking voice slithered into my mind again. "You're nowhere," one whispered. "You don't exist anymore. Look at the mess you made. You really thought this was a noble sacrifice? You're just a coward." I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to drown him out. Even in death, I wasn't free of him. The fragmentation of my mind, hadn't magically healed when my heart stopped. One was still here, tethered to my spirit, a parasite feeding on my grief. The paramedics rolled the gurney toward the front door. The neighbors were outside. I could see them through the living room window, standing on their lawns in the chilly morning air, arms crossed, whispering. The flashing red and blue lights painted their faces in morbid, rhythmic strokes. "Ma'am," the officer with the notepad said softly, crouching beside Mom. "We need to clear the scene. Is there someone who can come sit with your youngest? A friend? You shouldn't drive to the hospital alone to tell your husband." Mom blinked, the words seeming to take a long time to travel through her brain. "My sister." She rasped, her throat dry. "Aunt Sarah. She lives 20 minutes away." "I'll call her," the officer offered gently. An hour later, Aunt Sarah arrived. She burst through the front door, taking one look at the blood-stained towels in the open bathroom and collapsing into a weeping mess. She grabbed Chloe, burying the girl's face in her chest. Mom walked out the front door, without a coat. She got into her car. The officer had insisted on driving her, but Mom had flatly refused. "I have to do this," she had said, her voice dead. I locked the door. "I have to tell him." I didn't want to go, but I found myself tethered to her. As Mom's car pulled out of the driveway, I was suddenly sitting in the passenger seat. The world outside the windows blurred by in shades of gray. The radio was off. The only sound was the jagged, uneven rhythm of Mom's breathing. She gripped the steering wheel so hard her fingernails dug into the leather. "What am I going to say?" she whispered to the empty car. "David, what am I going to say?" The hospital smelled of bleach, old coffee, and sickness. It was the same smell that used to trigger my panic attacks, the smell that made one retreat into the dark corners of our mind and plot our escape. Dad was in the cardiac ICU. He had suffered a severe myocardial infarction 3 days ago. The stress of his mother's illness, the 2 jobs, and my medical bills had finally broken his heart. Physically broken it. Mom stopped outside room 412. Through the glass, I could see him. He looked so old. He was only 38, but his skin was gray, and tubes ran from his arms and chest to a tower of beeping monitors. His chest rose and fell in shallow, painful increments. Mom pushed the door open. The hinges squeaked. Dad opened his eyes. A weak, tired smile touched his lips when he saw her. "Hey." His voice was muffled by the nasal cannula. "You're back early. How was Chloe's birthday breakfast?" Mom stopped at the foot of the bed. She didn't take off her purse. She just stood there, staring at his pale, hopeful face. "Laura?" Dad shifted, the monitors spiking slightly as his heart rate increased. "What's wrong? Is it my mom?" "David," Mom said. Her voice didn't sound like her own. It sounded like metal grinding against stone. "What is it? Did something happen at the house?" Mom opened her mouth, but a sob ripped its way out instead. She clapped both hands over her face, her shoulders violently heaving. I floated beside Dad's bed, my spectral hands hovering over his. "Dad, please," I cried silently. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Laura, you're scaring me," Dad said, trying to sit up. The machine beside him began to beep faster. Beep, beep, beep. "Where are the girls? Where's Lily?" "She's gone," Mom wailed, her knees buckling. She grabbed the metal railing of the bed, dragging herself down until she was kneeling on the cold linoleum, her face pressed into the blankets near Dad's feet. "David, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She's gone." Silence stretched over the room, thick and suffocating. "Gone," Dad repeated, the word lacking comprehension. "What do you mean, gone? Did she run away again?" "She died, David." Mom screamed into the blankets, the raw truth finally clawing its way out. "She killed herself. In the bathtub." Last night. I locked her in, and I didn't check on her, and she bled to death. The monitors didn't just spike. They shrieked. Dad's eyes widened, the pupils blowing out until they were almost entirely black. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He stared at the ceiling, his chest heaving as he tried to pull in air that suddenly felt like glass.
Dad.
I screamed, reaching for him, but my hands phased right through his chest. Lily, Dad choked out. He raised a trembling hand, clutching the fabric of his hospital gown over his heart. My little girl. No. No, Laura, you're lying. You're lying to me. It's my fault, Mom sobbed, thrashing against the bed frame. I told her to die. I was angry, and I told her to do it. Oh God, David, I killed our daughter. Dad's face contorted in sheer agony. His hand gripped his chest tighter. The monitor beside him changed from a rapid, panicked rhythm to a chaotic, jagged scroll. VFib. The heart was quivering, no longer pumping blood. Alarms blared in the hallway. The door was thrown open, and nurses flooded in. Code blue. We need a crash cart in here. A nurse yelled, grabbing Mom by the arms and hauling her away from the bed. Ma'am, you need to step outside. David. Mom shrieked as two orderlies dragged her into the hallway. David, don't leave me too.
Please.
I stood frozen beside the bed as doctors swarmed my father. They ripped open his gown. They pressed the paddles to his chest.
Clear.
His body convulsed off the mattress, slamming back down lifelessly. Look what you did, one hissed in my ear. The voice was louder now, solidifying in the hospital room. I turned and saw him. He didn't look like a monster. He looked exactly like me. A 10-year-old girl with dark hair, but his eyes were empty and cold. You broke his heart. Literally. You killed him too. No. I sobbed, sinking to the floor, covering my ears. No, please. Save him. Please save him.
Clear.
The jolt rocked his body again. Beep, beep, beep. A weak, steady rhythm returned to the monitor. The doctor let out a long breath, wiping sweat from his forehead. We've got a pulse. Push another round of amiodarone. He's stable but barely. Put him into a medically induced coma. His heart can't take the stress right now. I collapsed onto the floor, pulling my ghostly knees to my chest. He was alive. But he was gone. My family was entirely shattered. Time lost its meaning after that. I learned that ghosts don't sleep. We just exist in a continuous loop of observation and regret. The funeral was 3 days later. It was a closed casket. It had to be. Dad wasn't there. He was still in the ICU, kept asleep so his heart wouldn't tear itself apart from the grief. Mom sat in the front row of the funeral home, wearing a black dress that hung loosely off her suddenly frail frame. She hadn't eaten since the morning of Chloe's birthday. Chloe sat next to her, swinging her short legs against the pew. She wore a black velvet dress and clutched a stuffed rabbit I had given her for her 6th birthday. She didn't cry during the service. I think she had run out of tears, or perhaps her young mind had built a wall to block out the horror. I sat on the altar, right next to the small white casket. It felt surreal. There was no bright light. No angels coming to carry me away. Just the smell of cheap lilies and the stifled coughs of relatives who hadn't spoken to us in years, whispering about how tragic and disturbed I was. When it was over, people filed past Mom. They murmured the usual platitudes. She's in a better place. She's at peace now. She isn't suffering anymore. Every time someone said it, Mom winced as if they had slapped her. She's not at peace, Mom whispered to Aunt Sarah when the room was mostly empty. She died thinking her mother hated her. She died alone in the cold. I don't hate you, I said, standing directly in front of Mom, staring into her bloodshot eyes. Mom, I love you.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry I was sick. But she just stared right through me. 2 weeks passed. Dad finally woke up. The doctors told him the news again, with a therapist present this time. He didn't code. He just turned his face to the window and didn't speak for 4 days. Mom brought him home on a rainy Tuesday. The house was dead. The television never turned on. The kitchen, once always smelling of garlic and roasting chicken, smelled of dust and stale air. Mom ordered takeout that they barely touched. The bathroom door remained shut. Mom had taped it closed with masking tape. They used the half bath downstairs. I spent most of my time following Chloe. She had started talking to herself. One afternoon, she was sitting on the floor of her bedroom, playing with her dolls. She held up a plastic princess. You have to be quiet, Chloe whispered to the doll. If you're bad, you get locked in the bathroom. And then you turn to water and go away forever. My heart broke all over again. I looked across the room. One was standing in the corner, leaning against the wall, a smug smile on his face. The cycle continues. One said softly. The little one is traumatized. Soon she'll split too. Just like we did. You didn't save anyone, Lily. Shut up, I snarled, stepping toward him. I was starting to realize something about this afterlife. I was growing stronger. The overwhelming haze of confusion was fading. You did this. You took control of the body. You grabbed the razor. I protected us. One snapped, dropping the smug act. His face twisted into a mask of fury. She was hurting us. They all were. The doctors, the neighbor, the screaming, the locking us in rooms. I took us out of the pain. You didn't take us out of the pain. I screamed back, pointing down at Chloe. You just gave it to them. One stepped closer to me, his ghostly form flickering. Then what are you going to do about it, Lily?
You're dead.
You're nothing. I'm going to find a way to fix it, I said. That night, Mom couldn't sleep. Dad was heavily medicated, snoring softly in the master bedroom. Mom wandered the dark house like a ghost herself. She walked up the stairs, bypassing the taped-up bathroom, and stopped in front of my bedroom door. It had been untouched since the night I died. She turned the knob and pushed it open. The room smelled like me, vanilla body spray and old library books. Mom stepped inside, shivering in her thin nightgown. She walked over to my unmade bed and picked up my pillow, burying her face in it, breathing in my scent. She let out a muffled sob. I stood in the doorway, watching her. She sat on the edge of the mattress and began to absent-mindedly straighten my things. She moved a pile of clothes from the chair. She opened my nightstand drawer to put a stray pen inside. There, tucked beneath a stack of old math homework, was a notebook. It was black with silver stars on the cover. Mom paused. She reached in and pulled it out. It was my system journal. The therapist had told me to keep it. A place where all the alters could write, to help us communicate with each other. I had never shown it to Mom. I had been too ashamed of the things the others wrote. Mom turned on the small bedside lamp. Her hands were shaking as she opened the cover. The first page was in my handwriting. Round, neat, 10-year-old cursive. My name is Lily. I am 10. I like drawing, and I love my little sister Chloe. But there are other people in my head. Dr. Evans calls them alters. I call them the loud ones. Mom gasped softly, her fingers tracing my handwriting. She turned the page. The handwriting changed entirely. It was jagged, sharp, pressing so hard into the paper it almost tore through. I am one. I hold the anger. Lily is weak. She cries when the mother yells. I don't cry. I want to make it stop. The mother slapped us today. She is a threat. I will eliminate the threat or eliminate us. Mom dropped the book onto her lap, as if it had burned her. Her eyes widened in horror. She forced herself to pick it up again, flipping through the pages. She saw entries from Little Bird, an alter who only drew pictures of crying eyes. She saw entries from the protector, who wrote about standing guard at night so the bad neighbor couldn't come back. And then, she found the entry from the night before my death. It was my handwriting again, tear-stained and messy. Mom locked us in the bathroom. She said if I feel so bad, I should just die. I know she didn't mean it. She's just so tired. Dad is sick and Chloe needs a happy birthday. But one heard her. One says it's permission. One says it's an order. I'm fighting him. I'm sitting on the floor by the tub, holding my own hands so he can't get the razor from the cabinet. I'm fighting so hard. If I lose, if one wins. Mom, please don't hate yourself. Please know I fought him for 2 hours. I didn't want to leave you. I didn't want to ruin Chloe's birthday. I just got so tired. Tell Dad I'm sorry. Tell Chloe I'll be her guardian angel.
I love you, Mommy.
Even when you're mad. I love you so much. Mom stared at the page. The silence in the room was absolute. And then, something broke inside her. It wasn't a violent break. It was a shattering of the immense, suffocating wall of guilt she had been carrying. She pressed the book to her chest and fell sideways onto my bed, curling into a fetal position. She didn't wail this time. She just wept. Deep, cleansing tears of profound heartbreak, but also of understanding. You fought for me, she whispered into the empty room. My brave girl. You fought for me. I walked over to the bed. I didn't feel the sharp, suffocating ache in my chest anymore. I felt lighter. I looked back at the doorway. One was standing there. But he didn't look angry anymore. He looked small. He looked like exactly what he was, a traumatized fragment of a little girl who just wanted the pain to stop. I walked over to him. I didn't yell. I didn't fight him. I reached out and wrapped my arms around him. It's over, I whispered to my other half. We don't have to fight anymore. The pain is gone. One dissolved into light, melting into my chest. For the first time in my entire existence, my mind was quiet. There were no loud voices. No jagged edges. I was just Lily. Whole. Complete. I turned back to Mom. She had stopped crying. She was lying on the bed, holding the journal, breathing evenly. I reached out and placed my hand on her cheek. This time, my hand didn't phase through. I felt the warmth of her skin. She gasped, her eyes fluttering open. She looked exactly where I was standing. For a single, breathless second, I knew she saw me. "I love you too, Mommy," I whispered. Mom smiled. It was a broken, watery smile, but it was real. The room began to fill with a soft, warm light. The ceiling dissolved into a sky of brilliant, blinding white. I felt a gentle pull, like a current in a river, lifting me up off the floor.
I looked down one last time.
Months later, Dad would return to work, his heart scarred but beating. Mom would take the tape off the bathroom door. They would frame my journal entry and put it on the mantelpiece, right next to a picture of me and Chloe. They would never get over it, but they would survive it. They would learn to carry the grief, not as a weapon that punished them, but as a monument to how much they loved me. And Chloe would grow up, not in the shadow of a tragedy, but in the light of a sister who fought as hard as she could. The light pulled me upward, and finally, I closed my eyes and I slept.